Running Aces Casino and Racetrack is the Twin Cities' premier choice for exciting entertainment, 24/7 gaming and dining, monthly comedy shows, and $1 blackjack with no commission or ante, making it the most player-friendly casino around. Trout Air Tavern at Running Aces offers Minnesota-inspired handcrafted dishes with locally sourced ingredients and the trout that made the area famous. Running Aces Casino and Racetrack, 25 minutes north of downtown. Visit runaces.com. Running Aces, your night out is waiting. For football people who like football, here come two words for you. Purple Live. This is Purple Live with Matthew Coller.
All right, welcome into Purple Live. Matthew Coller along with ESPN reporter Courtney Cronin. You can always join in on the show. 651-646-8255. That is 651-646-8255. Get your thoughts on the Minnesota Vikings loss to the New Orleans Saints or to their upcoming game about the Detroit Lions. Later on, Manny will have some questions for the week as they start to practice again tomorrow. Also at 6:30, we will have Vikings safety Anthony Harris, who got quite a bit of playing time against the New Orleans Saints on Sunday. And my question for you today, if you're going to call in, here's a place for you to start, is where do you stand in the now great Kirk Cousins debate? Are you annoyed with Kirk Cousins after what happened the other night? Are you not blaming him at all for any of the things that have happened for this team to have more not wins than last year? I can't say more losses, but they now have more not wins than they did last season. Are you frustrated with him? Are you frustrated with the team for spending the money they did on him? Or are you feeling like they are in a great spot with him as their quarterback and it's really other issues for why they are not top of the NFC? Courtney, after a couple days to reflect on Sunday's game, and I watched the film back, I know you do the same thing. What was your ultimate takeaway about the way Kirk Cousins performed against the Saints?
Well, I'll take it back one step further. My ultimate takeaway from that game is that the Thielen fumble didn't have to be the dagger. It was in that very moment, but it didn't have to be. And I think with Cousins, he played well throughout the first half. And then it was that one mistake I think had everybody shook, really. They come out in the second half, in the third quarter, and you see that first series, the near interception by Manti Te'o, the not really smart 4th and 1 from your own 45 pass to Laquan Treadwell. I mean, we were talking about this in game. It wasn't exactly a great pass. It was a bad read to begin with, considering Marshawn Lattimore's on him. So, just kind of decision things like that. And when you watch it back, he's got Aldrick Robinson underneath who's open. I believe Thielen was open as well. There were just it's just kind of the same, a lot of everything. I don't think Kirk lost them that game necessarily because you have two big mistakes by your two top players, which just cannot happen. And I also think that that's why it's not, I don't think that the freak out mode, for me at least, I'm not chalking this thing up as the worst loss that they've had because those are things you get over. Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs don't typically, and they won't continue to make mistakes like that. But I do think there are some concerns with Kirk Cousins that people, I don't know why, there's a good portion of this fan base that just doesn't want to hear it.
8 games into his career, he's got really good numbers. He's got good Pro Football Focus grades. He has a good quarterback rating. And there still is, though, almost each week, something that makes you wonder about whether he can win that big game. And then, yes, Stephon Diggs stops on that route. But also when I look back at the tape, you see Kirk Cousins doesn't really look at where he's throwing the ball.
No, his eyes.
He doesn't see his receiver.
The corner, whoever was with him, PJ Williams, the guy they picked apart in the first half. He continues going, and it's like Kirk didn't see Diggs stop. I don't think that's what, and that's kind of what we got to in postgame, where he wouldn't address that part. Did you see him stop? Because I don't think he did. I think that he honestly thought he was going to keep going, that he would have been able to do what he's done all season long up through the first 8 games of the season, throw it to a spot, expect your guy to get there, particularly when you're in man coverage.
So the question that it brings me to, and that interception is now being put entirely on Diggs, and I don't think it is. I think it's on both of them. I think it's Diggs for trying to make a play, which is what he has done with Kirk Cousins well on a couple of occasions. I remember a sideline pass, possibly against the Rams, where Cousins was rolling out and Diggs found some space. There was definitely one against Arizona. Same thing. It's the scramble drill. He's rolling out. And I mean, Mike Zimmer wouldn't say on Monday that it was entirely Diggs' fault. So he was saying, well, we have the scramble drill, and then he went on about how he doesn't want people to take responsibility. But where I'm moving to in this conversation about Kirk Cousins is not as much on whether we think he is great or not great. Like, we can leave that to TV people who have 30 seconds to spout out Kirk Cousins' opinions. But since we have a little more time, are the things around Kirk Cousins on this team, now that we know they're not trading for anyone, are they good enough to make up for some of these shortcomings? The shortcomings aren't going to disappear. They've been there the whole time. And we know that he can make really good throws and put up big numbers. But I think what ultimately determines where this team goes is how they play on defense and whether Dalvin Cook comes back and if they can find a way to protect him, which I'm skeptical of. And that's where I get with this team in wondering if they can beat the best in the NFC is I'm not sure that they have enough around him to paint over some of those shortcomings that are not going anywhere.
Receiver-wise, yes. Tight end-wise, I mean, they're not being able to use Kyle Rudolph the way that John DeFilippo, and I mean, the strategy that you would think would have been brought over from Philadelphia, that's not really your number 3 receiver at that point. So I think that skill position-wise, they do. Dalvin is a good place to start. Why don't we go there? Because we can bring in the run game, we can bring in the offensive line. We knew the offensive line was going to be a problem. It was not going to get any better, regardless of injuries, and you have to move guys around. Maybe you find a better spot for so-and-so, like for maybe Rashad Hill is better at left tackle. But that's not really the position you want to be in, having to rely on that for the rest of the season, considering this tough NFC North stretch they're about to face, starting with Detroit this weekend. I think that once they do get Dalvin back, which, is starting, as I said, it's looking like after the bye, which is week 11 in Chicago, I think you can open things up more. I think you can actually have a screen game, establish it, and stick with it, unlike what you've been able to do so far where, Latavius Murray gets, how many passes? He had he had 5, actually, I think this might have been like a season high for him so far. 5 catches for 39 yards in that game this past weekend, which that's just not his role.
Couple were at the end.
Yes, I mean, that's not something that that's not just a particular strength of his. I mean, that's why you have and why you drafted a guy like Dalvin Cook. So you get him back. It's a different element of the offense you haven't been able to rely on. But can the offensive line hold up whenever that point is? If it is week 11, considering they faced a lot of injuries, is Riley Reif going to be back? It just feels like with this team, everything kind of needs to be perfect in order for it to be firing on all cylinders, because we saw how good the offensive line was when it was playing against a really bad run defense, able to protect, get Murray out to the second level. But what happens when that competition is much, much, much better that you're going to face? I think there's, in a way, they've had to play with one hand tied behind their back because of the offensive line, and I just think that this is as good as it's going to get.
Okay, answer this for me. And if you want to give us a phone call, you can answer this as well. 651-646-8255. 651-646-8255. The Vikings win the NFC North if what? Blank. NFC North, they win if they do this.
Well, certainly. I mean, they've got to beat the Packers at home. That's where you start if you have a very easy tiebreaker that way. They can't split with Chicago. I think that they've got to win both of those games, and it's going to be tough to do just because of the way Chicago's playing right now. I had a conversation this morning. It could take. I mean, if it takes 8 wins to win the NFC North, then that's a problem. I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think it could be 9. 9-7, 9-6-1, if that's what the Vikings are. That could win you the division. I mean, that just shows you how good the NFC North is, and that it's a division of the NFL that just cannibalizes itself week after week. But I think that you do that, and I think that you have to split with Detroit because Detroit is so tricky. I never pick them to sweep the Lions, no matter how bad the Lions are playing during a certain stretch, like losing and getting torched by the Jets in the first part of the season, or how good they are. I mean, they're just such an up and down team. I don't know the identity of that defense just yet after what they allowed Russell Wilson to do this past weekend. That one is always tricky with me, so I think you have to split with them, and I think that starts with getting a win at home this weekend.
One of the things that is going in Chicago's favor, because I agree about beating Chicago if you really want to make this happen and getting a win against Green Bay. I mean, I think that your short answer could just be take care of the NFC North in order to win the division, that they're going to have to do that.
It's just no easy task. Like, I'm trying to be realistic about it.
I'm looking at Chicago's schedule, and they have games on their slate that are just guaranteed wins. Like, if you lose, it would be stunning, which, well, to one of these teams, Minnesota lost, so it's possible. They go to Buffalo this week, and Buffalo is going to start Nathan Peterman. So that one could be a 20-point win. Or Terrell Pryor. He signed as a wide receiver, right? Well, he's their best quarterback now.
You watch what they did against Brady last night. I mean,
their defense is pretty good.
Pretty good, and they're going to be going against Mitchell Trubisky.
How are they going to score any points? Like, Nathan Peterman's going to be their quarterback against probably the best defense in the NFL in Chicago now. They're not going to score any points. So let's just say that's an easy win against Buffalo. They face Detroit twice still, and if their heart's not in it, Chicago can beat them. They also have Giants and they have San Francisco on their schedule. Now, when you look at the Vikings schedule in comparison, the only game where you would say, oh, yeah, that's definitely mark it down if they lose it's stunning is Miami, right? And even then, Miami has their moments. But the rest is Detroit, Chicago, Green Bay, so 3 straight NFC North games, at New England, at Seattle. You mentioned that earlier. That is an incredibly difficult back-to-back games. And then they end with Detroit and Chicago again. I mean, I think that they have it. You're focusing on the schedule and the division. I think that this is really an uphill battle for this team, that they're going to be very much tested. They took care of the easy teams on their schedule outside of Buffalo, but now it's pretty much all tough teams the rest of the way unless Detroit just mails it in.
And that's what you expect. Obviously, with schedule makers, they want this, from the league office. But the way that the Vikings schedule, and this is why back in July on my vacation in Colorado, I clapped back at somebody. I was very irritated because everybody was acting like my pick of the Packers winning the division was so outlandish and just negative and awful. I'm like, look at their schedule. Just look at it. I mean, they started out with a fairly relatively okay. You have San Francisco week 1 at home, win. You look at the Green Bay game. You didn't know what Aaron Rodgers would look like coming out of that debut. Obviously, you see what he did against Chicago. Okay, I marked that down as a loss, and then they tie, and then you should have a win there against Buffalo, and then you have a stretch that's the Rams and the Eagles, and that's kind of your first really, really tough stretch. So then you kind of have, all right, it's the Cardinals then, and then it's the Jets. You're going downward a little bit, and then you go back up. I mean, it's just constantly been little tiny break here, long stretch of very hard teams. Little tiny break here, another stretch of really hard teams. And their division schedule, the way that these games are lined up, does not do them any favors. Yes, there's a bye in the middle of this there, but they have to start back out a very tough stretch or pick one back up in Chicago, in a place that they have typically not played very well. And as I said with Judwin on this last segment, they're 1 interception away from losing that game last year. And that is that is typically what happens in these Chicago games. It's typically one play that'll just derail the whole thing for the Vikings, and they got lucky.
In 2016, it was like the second play from scrimmage when Jordan Howard had a huge run, and then it all seemed to be
and people not dropping their hips in space.
Yeah, I know. That's always a problem. Let's go to Jeff in Texas here. How's it going tonight, Jeff?
Good.
What's up? What's on your mind?
So the whole Diggs stopping the route thing, and so what encouraged me with my rose purple colored glasses on is what I liked. What I saw was after that happened that they were talking afterwards. Cousin wasn't sitting over on the bench and Diggs over at the other end. They were actually communicating. But and like you said, it takes weeks and weeks and weeks of an NFL season for guys to get in sync. And I'm okay. I think I texted a buddy. We got to sweep the Bears. We got to beat Seattle, sweep the Bears. Our only chance to the playoffs, I think, is to win in the division. I mean, the wild card might be there, but even so, I mean, I'm diehard, bleed purple, born and raised on them. If we don't make the playoffs this year, I'm totally optimistic about the next 2 years. And I know the Cousins bashing is I shouldn't call it bashing with the criticisms, but he makes throws that quarterbacks for the last 20 years wouldn't even have tried, that he drops in on dimes on Thielen and Diggs, and it's just, I think there's a lot more positive there, even with him throwing the ball backwards into the ground.
So let me ask you just real quick, Jeff. Just when it comes to this team, what is your confidence level that they can win the NFC North? I know that you just said you're a purple rose-colored glasses, but the schedule is pretty tough. There's an argument to say that they did not beat the teams in the big games that they've had, the Rams and the Saints, but they also didn't get murdered by either one of those two teams either.
Yeah, but they could have. They could have easily beat the Rams, and they should have beat the Saints. And I think it was Phil that was saying, and it's not Thielen's fault, if he doesn't fumble, we win that game. Some of that stuff I put on coaching. And who was it? Was it Lattimore or somebody in his press conference that said, "Man, it was a dogfight," and then in the third quarter,
Cam Jordan. Yep.
Yeah.
Cam Jordan. Sorry. Yeah, they had that one mistake, and everybody just some leader needs to come in there, whether it's Diggs or Thielen or Cousins, the coaches. Somebody's got to. That shouldn't have been the end of it. It shouldn't have been a deflation out of there. The Bears, I agree with you, Courtney. I don't think they're for real. But we got to beat him, and we got to beat the stinking Detroit team. At least Golden State's not there anymore.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff, for the call. We appreciate
Jeff.
it. One thing I want to jump back on what Jeff said. There are throws, I agree with that Kirk Cousins has made, that we think about the tight window throw to send him to overtime, where he's been able to kick it into another gear. Mm-hmm. And that's something that they just didn't feel confident Case Keenum could do at a consistent level. I mean, how many times we're talking about the horseshoe and miracle plays and things like that with Case Keenum's tenure? You expect that out of a guy like Kirk Cousins, but you don't expect some of the things that we've seen where it just seems like there's what's the word I'm looking for? It's not perception, just a processing issue almost. Like, for as testy as Mike Zimmer got about the question the other night about his clock management and the hurry up situations, and Kirk the same way. They have not been very successful at 2-minute drives, and that's you can pin that on coaching, you can pin that on Kirk, you can pin that on play calling.
Is it fair to say, and I tweeted this out after the game that on Sunday night, that Kirk is very good, but there's just times where instinctively there are things that are just missing from his game. Like when something goes wrong, we know the offensive line has issues, but if everything hits the fan on the offensive line, can Kirk still make a play and make something happen when things are not going perfectly for him?
Sometimes not, but it's not an all the time thing.
Right.
That's just but that's what you get with him. That's what you expected to get with him.
It's such a unique and specific way of handling certain pressure and things like that for Kirk, where there are times, and I was watching this back last night on the coach's film, where Cam Jordan is about to smack him in the mouth, and he gets the throw off, and it's a great throw. And you're like, wow, man, he stood in there right in that pocket and made that throw. But what you're talking about is the ability to really move and go off script and do the things that Rodgers does or Cam Newton does or Russell Wilson does or John Elway did the best of all time, I think. Those things we don't see from him, and that can often be the difference. There was a play that Carson Wentz made on Sunday against the Jags where he just made this spectacular play that was very athletic, and he does that too. That's the one thing that's missing, and sometimes it actually turns into it going worse, where it's an interception or something like that when he's on the move and trying to run around, and there's the situational things. But I think, Courtney, where the fans are in a tough spot is, what are you supposed to do about it? Like when we sit here and say that, and you're right, Manny, and you're right with the thing that you're talking about with certain situations and so forth, and the clock management and all the numbers we've studied, the third downs he's not particularly good at. But if you're a fan, you're probably listening to these conversations and going, what are we supposed to do? I mean, he's the quarterback for the next 3 years, and he's good. The only thing, if you're someone like Jeff who called in, the only thing you can really do is say, let's just hope that some of those issues get resolved, right? I almost feel bad
just
for...
hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I almost feel bad for people who are in that position who, even if they're not disagreeing, like even if they understand some of the shortcomings, are like, what are you supposed to do about it?
But I don't think you expect it to continually, for the price you're paying for him, to happen over and over and over again if you're a fan, which is why I do think there is part of this, this group of Viking supporters who understand that, yes, this is the hand you're dealt, but there's other areas that are not pulling their weight. And some of it is just, based on injuries. And, of course, we keep going back to the offensive line. That's, I think, a major site of frustration. I know that I get that question multiple times a day about the offensive line and why they haven't addressed it and why it continues to go, the makeup continues to look the way it is right now.
This is Purple Live, Matthew Coller, along with ESPN's Courtney Cronin, Manny Hill producing. We will be joined by Viking safety Anthony Harris in about 10 minutes. So the reason that I mentioned fans being frustrated by this, I'm going to ask you the most annoying question that I can come up with.
Okay.
When we come back about Kirk Cousins, the quarterback situation. I have thought of, if you're going to the water cooler tomorrow and you want to annoy your Viking fan friends, this is the question that you ask them. We'll be back.
This episode presented by Minnesota's very own Ticket King. If you're looking for tickets to a game or concert, visit TicketKingOnline.com or the link on the 1500 ESPN Sports Calendar page. Seats to fit every budget at all venues and all stadiums with zero fees added at checkout. Visit TicketKingOnline.com or call 612-341-4141.
They lose in Philly? Maybe not, but it was Linval Joseph running a touchdown back on a fumble that really helped, and at the goal line, a fumble by Philly. So assuming they beat themselves, the record's probably the same.
Maybe. I would take if someone approached me at the water cooler with that, I'd just bring my own Brita and I'd sit at my desk. Because that's a conversation I don't know if I want to get into. I understand your point. He wouldn't have been able to lead them to overtime to get them there with those types of throws and that comeback, from halftime in Green Bay. But he also might not have been in that situation to do it in the first place. So I think in Buffalo or against Buffalo, he would have been able to sense pressure. He wouldn't have been in that situation where he's, getting sacked and losing the ball because he would have already escaped. I think that there's the biggest difference. We talked about this. It's not mobility. It's not athleticism. It's sensing pressure, and it's the internal clock of timing that would, to me, when we were looking at Case Keenum, Sam Bradford, Kirk Cousins, Teddy Bridgewater, that was one of the biggest deciding factors of what was different between them.
I think something that's really fun about this year's Vikings team is how many what-if conversations that you can have about the offseason decision to sign Kirk Cousins and just where that's going to go. But over the next 8 weeks, we will find out. So now we are going to welcome into the show, Purple Live, our first Viking player ever on the show, Anthony Harris, safety for the Vikings. Anthony, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
All right, Anthony, so tell me, this year you have stepped into a role here with Andrew Sendejo being out, so you've played a little more than you've played in the past. How have you felt like you have handled that, and where do you think the defense is overall?
I feel like I've handled it pretty well. In the past, Sendejo or whenever Harris and those guys missed a little bit of time, I've got my number called. So I've just learned in the past that, you always want to stay prepared, stay in tune with the game plan and what we're trying to get done going into each week because, you never know when you can get called up or get pulled in to play a little bit more defensively.
Anthony, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. One thing I thought was interesting, Anthony Barr saying yesterday at his locker, Coach Zimmer, after echoing the Saints game, that it's a good performance defensively. You hold Drew Brees to 120 yards passing. He's dinking and dunking his way to a 30-point win. But Barr had kind of mentioned that, you just don't feel that great because you didn't get the win. What do you take away from the way that, obviously you played 92% of snaps against the Saints. What do you take away from the defensive performance of how you were able to contain Drew Brees in that game?
We were able to do a few things. We were able to, get to him on a few occasions. we were able to limit some of the big plays that they were able to, try to get against us. So I think overall we did a pretty good job of, not giving up big plays, rallying to the ball, trying to get a number of guys to the ball carriers. But we just got to do a better job of not hurting ourselves with penalties. And that's defensively, but that's just as a team as overall as well, too.
Anthony, I'm curious about the depth on this defense and how you've seen it grow over the past couple of years. I mean, you're a big part of that, but also Holton Hill steps in that game and plays very well. Guys who didn't expect to get a chance, and they're in there and they're doing it. And maybe we just didn't notice, Anthony, because no one got hurt last year. It seemed like everybody was in except for maybe the one game Andrew got suspended or the one game Everson missed, but aside from that, and then this year there's more injuries. But what have you seen from some of the players that maybe fans weren't as familiar with, like yourself, Stephen Weatherly, and how they've been able to step into these roles?
I just think, guys have just been able to, stay focused. Obviously, the front office has done a good job of, identifying players that they think, have the talent to be able to step in cases, injuries or whatever that may be. But I think guys have done a good job of just embracing the role, being a good teammate. Obviously the veterans have done a good job of, grooming the younger guys as they come in. You had a guy like Terrence Newman who was very helpful with the secondary. And as you look in the other, core positions, there's guys who take leadership and, they're coaching up the young guys. The young guys are doing a great job of listening to the coaches as well as the veteran players and just continue to develop. So I think that over time, as guys gotten increased roles, they've just been able to take advantage of all the preparation that they've been putting in leading to that point.
The last few weeks, the narrative that's out there is that this Vikings defense is back. It's back to where it was in 2017, all the little things and big things that made this team and this defense the number one defense in the NFL. That things had changed from weeks 1 through 4. And the common theme and the common word we'd heard in the locker room is that things have been simplified, that, the scheme, the way it is, that you guys have been able to find ways to kind of just mitigate some of the issues that popped up in weeks 1 through 4. What to you is the biggest change that you've seen from weeks 5 through weeks 8?
I think guys have, just went out there and tried to focus on playing football. We're not out there really, chasing to be the defense from last year. We're just looking to go out there and play really good team football, and that takes all 11 guys out there on the field. So everyone's been focusing on, going out there, doing their individual job at a high level, and then, hoping that if everyone does their job, that we'll end up with the results that we want. So we've just been focusing on that, focusing on the fundamentals, but as well as, still trying to chase some of our goals, which is, being able to stop the run, limit, giving up big plays, getting people in the third down, creating turnovers, and then getting off the field.
All right, Anthony, tell me something about yourself here. Every year, Courtney and I, we cover training camp, and we see all these guys come in, and they're undrafted players, and then they get cut, and then another crop comes in the next time, and every team has this going on. There's 30 guys who come in, undrafted guys, and then they come and they go quickly, and yet you've been able to stick here and carve out a role for yourself and then become a key player who steps in. What is it that you did that made you stand out and then stick with this team? Because a lot of guys might make it for 1 year, but then they're gone the next, and now you've become a player who's got a real role on this team.
I think it was just coming in, trying to carve out a role for yourself, no matter the situation when you're coming into it, just coming into it with a positive mindset, just going out there each day, proving to, the players around you, yourself, the coaches in the organization, that you deserve the opportunity to give in, and that you're going to go out and earn it every day and every year afterwards. So for me, it was just about, knowing I have the talent, having the confidence in myself, and a little bit of an edge that, I came in as a free agent, but that doesn't define me as a player and my capabilities in this league. So it's just going out there and proving people that, that I'm a guy who can play.
So I saw a video on the internet few hours ago when I was doing some research for our radio show, where you were at the Egan Pet Clinic and you were taken around. You were petting a very nice looking poodle
named Walter. I think,
named Walter. Yes, that's right. Was that? How did that come about? Do you have animals? Do you have dogs? Do you want to be a vet? I know you're a sociology major, so maybe that's kind of close to being a veterinary major.
No, it's
not at all.
No, not even a little bit. How'd you end up going to the vet?
It was just one of those things, where as an organization we wanted to go out there and show appreciation for the different job fields. So we got the opportunity to go into different fields and just experience what the other people do at their job on a daily basis. And for me, it was going there, visiting the vet, and checking out some of the animals there. I don't personally own a dog or any pets, but it's something I enjoy. Obviously, with the season and traveling and different things, it's a little bit tougher with time and things like that. But I definitely enjoy dogs, and whenever I can get around them and have time to interact with them, I always try to take time to do that.
All right, Anthony, I have to then show you my Greyhound. I'll show you a picture of the Greyhound. Maybe we can get you a Greyhound at some point. They're very easy to adopt. I'll tell you all about it tomorrow. So who's got the best animal on the team? Like, who has the best dog or cat?
I'm not sure. Harrison's dog, his dog is very energetic. So if you're someone who wants to get out in the yard and play fetch for a bit, I would probably say his dog is the most energetic and exciting. I was just telling him the other day that he might need to calm him down a little bit. But Kendrick's dog, his dog is really nice. I believe he has a Frenchie. But it's one of those dogs where it looks nice. You can have fun, play with them, but at the same time, they won't take too much energy from you.
Harrison Smith having an energetic dog is like the polar opposite of what I would expect, considering he's such a mellow guy off the field.
Or at least around us.
At least around us, yeah. So how excited were you when you find that you're going to be walking into this palatial estate of a practice facility that they put a cryotherapy chamber in the training room? I know that you have a business in Richmond, Virginia, Cryorva, that you opened recently. Is that correct?
Yeah. We've been open a year now.
What do you get out of cryotherapy? I've done it a few times and I've been miserable doing it. Absolutely miserable.
Yeah, it's not one of the things you're jumping to do. Obviously the temperatures are pretty cold, but you hop in the cryo machine, it drops your core temperature down, and it's forcing your body to heat itself up again. So that causes you to get more blood circulation. So it helps recovery, getting fresh blood into, if you have an injury, just flushing that out, getting new blood in. And as far as football-wise, getting your body ready to go for the next day. But for some other people for my business person who use it, it has good effects for them as well. A lady came in with diabetes, and she has, poor circulation. So that helps her. So different people use it for many different reasons. Some people use it as a post-workout thing. Some people like to, get in it before and just loosen up and get their body going a bit because it helps with mobility.
We were told when we went on the tour of the entire facility in March that the chamber that the Vikings have, you can fit 3 players in there, 2 if you're going in with Linville.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the limit is when Linville is popping in there, but yeah, there are a number of guys who get in there. We like to get in as a group. Guys usually, pop on some music and we try to, dance in there and move a little bit just to try to stay a little bit warm while we're going through the session.
I think that might be the best way, Anthony, that you can describe to the people of Richmond, Virginia, what it's like to be in Minnesota for the winter. Is basically going in here, right?
Yeah, that would be the closest thing to it, coming out in the middle of the winter. Having a little moisture on your nose, start to freeze up a little bit in your nose hairs. That's similar to the feeling that you get, when you're in the machine for a second.
All right, Anthony, let me wrap up with this. You're facing another great quarterback. It seems like every week you are in Matt Stafford. Tell me about your preparation as a safety when you've got a great quarterback on the other side. I'm sure that it's pretty similar for everybody, but Stafford does some really special things with his arm and his legs. So take us through what your process is like of scouting another team's offense and quarterback.
Obviously, you got to know who your opponent is. You want to know who his favorite target is, what he likes to do in certain situations, as far as pass. If you're a team who likes to pressure the quarterback, what some of his answers is going to be. What if you're going to pressure him? What is he going to do? Is he going to run out of screens? Is he going to get the ball out quick? So you got to kind of know those type of things, as well as you got to know if he's a mobile guy who can escape the pocket. So that's a few things that we're going to just take a look at this week in preparation, just seeing how we're going to attack them, as a defense.
All right, Anthony. Well, congratulations on being our first Viking guest here on our Purple Live show. We thank you very much for that. And you know what? I didn't expect to get dog scouting reports, but you did a great job with those too.
You have a future in that.
In dog scouting?
In dog scouting. I can't wait to go talk to Eric Kendricks about his French Bulldog. It's a dog after my own heart.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking to, try to babysit for him a little bit, get a little dog time with his dog, and give him back.
You know what? I'll tell you, man, before I actually got the dog, and I hadn't had one since, living with my parents as a kid, I hadn't had one on my own. I was nervous, and it took a little while. I had to babysit someone else's dog to make sure, okay, I won't kill it. I can get my own one. I can do this. So.
Yeah. Got to go for a little test run.
Yeah.
All right.
You might just have one at your locker in a day or two, and then you just might have to figure it out. So it won't be us, though. It's not us.
Well, Anthony, awesome stuff. Always appreciate talking with you in the locker room, and we will see you around. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Anthony Harris there, Minnesota Vikings safety, and we can safely say the best Vikings player guest we've ever had.
The best.
On the show. Number
Bar
one.
none. Number one.
Easily.
Literally the first.
The first and best Purple Live guest. So we appreciate that. From Anthony, we're going to take a quick break. We will take a phone call here and talk some more about what we're looking for this week, Vikings and Detroit Lions. Purple Live, Matthew Coller, Courtney Cronin.
Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience this football season. Tons of TVs, legendary appetizers, amazing fresh half-pound burgers, handcrafted sandwiches, and a wide variety of other pub favorites. The drink menu is awesome too. Huge selection of tap beer, handcrafted cocktails, and the best Bloody Marys in town. Seriously, these Bloodies are awesome. Try the Bacon Bloody, the Jalapeno Bloody, the Mother Mary, or just get a flight and try them all. Plus, Lucky's 13 celebrates Sunday Fun Day. Happy hour all day long on Sunday, every Sunday. Events and prize giveaways during games, too. Lucky's 13 has locations in Bloomington, Burnsville, Mendota, Plymouth, and Roseville. Having people over for the game? Call ahead to Lucky's and order some of those legendary apps, and they'll be ready to bring home when you get there. It's football time at Lucky's 13 Pubs. Find them online at luckys13pub.com. luckys13pub.com. It's the most wonderful time of the year, football time. And Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience. luckys13pub.com.
And we don't have the distractions of a rookie kicker or, some of the distractions that happened with Everson Griffin that were obvious things that made the defense a problem earlier. We're still a team built primarily on defense, and everything else is supposed to come after, even with an $84 million quarterback. So my question would be to you guys, a little round-robin around the table of what's going on in the rest of the conferences. I'm sorry, but I think every team is facing a ton of division opponents to finish their season. And that you see a lot of deceptive stuff with teams going out and beating AFC teams and teams in other divisions. But everybody has this kind of schedule the Vikings got. I'll hang up and listen.
Thanks. I appreciate the call, Omar. Well, we went through the Bears.
I don't think everybody has the same sort of schedule the Vikings have. I think that is not correct.
Well, hang on. Let me pull up the Packers.
Of course, no, I mean, the Packers have a tough stretch, but you look at the rest of the division, the Bears certainly do not. The Lions certainly do not. The Packers just started their stretch. They have New England coming up. They just come off of the game at the Rams where they lose on that heartbreaker. I think the Vikings have the toughest schedule. Yes, they play the same opponents to a stretch. I mean, they all have the AFC East this year. They have their conference, their common conference opponents, and several NFC West teams too. But I think that the Vikings by far have the toughest schedule. And I mean, when you look at strength of schedule earlier in the year, they were top 5.
Well, and that's just how the schedule is made, is that when you win your division, you play other division winners. That's how it's set up. Now, Chicago had at least 3 games where we said, no way they lose, right? Like, it'd be shocking if they lost because the opponents are so bad. San Francisco's in there. I forget the other 2 teams. The Giants were in there.
Buffalo.
Buffalo, that's right.
This week.
So that's 3 teams that it would be mind-blowing if they lost to. Same thing goes for the Packers. I mean, they've got Miami. It'd be surprising if they lost to. Arizona comes up for them December 2nd, and then they have the Jets on December 23rd. That's the thing about the Vikings and the difference in the schedules, is the Vikings have Miami, and it would be very surprising if they lost to Miami at home. The rest are all good teams who are in the race, and that's what's going to maybe determine this, is just how good some of these other NFC North teams are, because I totally agree with what Omar's saying in that we still don't know on the other two NFC North teams that look really strong right now in Chicago and Green Bay. It's just not certain because they have flaws too.
I agree with that. And I think his point about right now, some of the issues that you see with the Vikings, I mean, yes, they're 8 weeks in. This is a halfway point. They have a tough part of their stretch coming up. But I think we're, in pumping the brakes on some of the issues that we've seen with the Vikings, from Kirk Cousins to the defense giving up big plays. What happens if those things are still happening week 12 through 16 through 17 when you're trying to close this thing out and win the NFC North? If those things are still happening, then I think that you're looking at this right now as a foreshadowing thing of you don't want that to happen.
What's interesting to me about this season versus other seasons in how we look at it is, I think in the past you might have gone, okay, 4-3-1 and got a chance to win the North. We'll see how it goes. Whereas this season, it just was cranked up to a different level of expectation. So instead of talking about, okay, it's this or it's that, and they've got this little problem or that little problem, but maybe we'll fix it. It's much more of how do they match up against the two best teams as opposed to how they even match up against the mediocre teams, because that's where they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
And, when we talk about how they played the Rams and how they played New Orleans, it's true that the final scores were not that big of a difference. But at one point in the game against the Rams, it's 28-17. And then, at another point, it's 31-20. So late in that game, it's 31-20. And your chances are almost shot. And they did a great job to come back and have the ball only down 7 points. That they made plays and scored a touchdown. Adam Thielen had the big 45-yard touchdown pass. But it's a 2-score game against the Rams where late in the game they're beating you. And then it's 30-13 against New Orleans. It's okay, you lost by 10, but at one point it's 30-13. So, they didn't exactly destroy you, but I think the closeness of the final scores aren't exactly reflective of where it was at one point in those games. At one point in those games, you reduced your win probability to almost zero.
Yeah, and to go back to what you were saying about being 4-3-1 at this point, I don't think a lot of people saw them outside of those first 5 weeks being anything more than 2-3. I know I didn't. So you take a look at what that is right there. And if you're taking a look at early playoff seeding, Kyle Rudolph was asked this question the other night, and I was actually very surprised to how he answered it. Considering guys are typically not even talking about the playoffs right now, but he was like, yeah, we're in a hole, and it was kind of, to paraphrase, they're with the Rams and the Saints. The top two teams, not even arguing that in the NFC, you take losses to them, that puts you behind the 8 ball considerably. I know Mike Zimmer said it's not a morgue. He thought it was a morgue in the post-game press conference the other night, and then yesterday reiterated that he still thinks he has a very good football team. I think they're a good football team as well. I don't think anybody's questioning that. It's just when you look at the stretch coming up in their win probability and what that does, for playoff seeding down the road, you also have to take into consideration the rest of the NFC North and how that's going to play into it when you're looking weeks 15 through 17 when you're trying to button this thing up.
Yeah, and I think that the reason that we're talking about it this way, especially with some of the shortcomings and things like that, is because we know that the team is talented enough to
this is
win
a
this
Super
division.
Bowl roster.
Right. That's what the roster is. So that's what the ceiling of this team is. Manny, usually we end the show with your couple of things that we're looking for. 3 questions. What do you got?
Well, we'll go with one here. Who on the Lions defense causes the most concern for the Vikings offense?
I'm going to say Snacks Harrison. They have Snacks Harrison now.
You just want to say it because of his name, although no, he's a very good player.
His Twitter is @Snacks. So it's weird to me,
fantastic.
That, isn't it? Like who has @Snacks? He does. Guy's name is Snacks. No, but I really do think he does because he's a very good nose tackle, and the Vikings have created rushing yards up the middle over the last few weeks, but they haven't faced a guy like this who can really impact the game. So I'm going to go with Snacks Harrison.
I'm going to go with Darius Slay. I think he's been playing really well as of recently. I mean, he's caused this team problems before. He's not, he's never really in that conversation among the elite of the top corners, but I think that he's done really well against the Vikings in years past. I mean, this is a team that gives them fits, quite a bit. But I mean, if he's coming, I mean, I think he was injured this past week and he finally participated back in practice. So if you've got a healthy Darius Slay, probably shadowing, if he's going to, I don't know if he'll follow Thielen in the slot. Maybe you stick him on Diggs the whole game. I mean, that's a tough matchup.
I just love that we have players in the NFL named Snacks Harrison and Taco Charlton. That's
Well, Taco's his real name,
yeah,
right?
I mean, he's like 7'1".
7'1"?
Isn't he 7 foot?
No.
I'm thinking of Taco, the guy in the NBA. Taco, what's his name? Hold on, let me look this up.
There's a guy in the NBA. There are two people named Taco?
I think they're spelled differently.
Well, there used to be a wide receiver who played for the Seahawks. I think his name was Taco Wallace.
Taco Fall, but I don't think it's not spelled like Taco Bell, like Cheesy Gordita Crunch. It's Tacko Fall.
That's fantastic.
Okay,
he went to UCF.
Question number 2, Manny.
Are we going to see any more Brandon Zylstra? Because I'm asking this for myself because I'm over Laquan Treadwell right now. So I'm just wondering if we're going to see any more Brandon Zylstra at all.
I say possible. More Aldrick Robinson.
Yeah.
I mean, look at his catch to touchdown ratio. He's playing pretty. He is what they wanted for that number 3 position, where it can be the occasional, a guy who has probably like 4 or 5 targets go to him a game, maybe, but he's that stretch the field threat that, can be that vertical threat you need in certain situations, especially on 4th down, apparently, in against the Jets.
I can't help but wonder how many more chances Treadwell gets to make mistakes like he did, because if the ball's at the 33, there's a good chance you're holding Breeze to a field goal, but you move him 15 more yards and it's just like guaranteeing him a touchdown.
And on 4th and 1, I mean, it wasn't the best pass, because it was high, but you got to catch that.
Yes, he could have made a play on the 4th and 1 too.
He won his route initially, and I think Lattimore did make a good play, but you got to win that.
Question number 3.
I've given us an extra 2 minutes before the end of the show,
okay,
so we're good. Can the Vikings make the playoffs without winning the division?
As much of a cluster as the rest of the league is, I say it's possible. But you look at Seattle, like they're not first, and Carolina, they're not in first place either in their division. That's where the battle would exist, and Seattle looks pretty good at 4-3. Carolina is rolling, so I say tough. I say, well, okay. Now, if we're looking where the tie, I hate this tie so much because, like, where does this play in? Like, are they a half game ahead or behind, or like, it's gonna be such a mess. Well, then, okay, so I've got time to take the call, then, Manny.
Yeah,
so you're telling me. All right, what's up, Danny?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Doing good.
Hey, good. 2 quick questions for you. One is Murray's been talked about as like kind of a cut candidate potentially after the season, given sort of the cap space. Is that still true given the production, sort of his production, and then Cook's unreliability? That's my first question. And then second one, buy or sell, 10-5-1 wins the division.
Cool.
Thank you, Danny. I'll answer the second one.
I'll take the first one.
I think I'm going to sell 10 wins. I think that's going to be tough.
I think that is tough.
I would say 8 or 9, and then we'll have to see how the rest of the division plays.
Well,
you answer the first one.
To recap Murray's contract situation, when they restructured him in March, the same day that
recap, like a salary cap.
Well, yes,
is that what you mean?
That's not what I meant, but okay. To get to Danny's question, they deleted the last year of his contract because originally he came here on that 3-year, $15 million deal. That's what it was, at least on paper. So I think he's, going into the season, you think, okay, Murray's back. You get Dalvin Cook back, but Murray's your really good secondary option if he's, if Cook's coming back slow. But now you look at this and you're like, he's been an incredible asset. Where would they be without him right now? So I think that there might be that conversation down the line, depending upon, when Dalvin Cook does come back this year. Okay, is Latavius Murray somebody that, do we really feel confident in Mike Boone and Rock Thomas that they're going to be able to take the load share, for Dalvin Cook next year, that they could part ways with him. But, he's a free agent. That's what the contract, what they restructured it, that he became a free agent in 2019. So if he's not re-signed by March, whatever it is, he hits the open market.
All right, can we find 6 wins here? over the next 9 weeks or 8 weeks? That's what it would take to go to 10-5-1. Can we? All right. So let's say they beat Detroit. Can they beat Detroit twice?
No.
Okay. Split with Detroit. Split with Chicago.
Fair. I still think they need to win in both.
I mean, there's 2 losses right away. So are you going to beat then Green Bay, New England, Seattle?
Seattle's a tricky one. I just don't know yet. I give them a loss right now in New England. And, when I was projecting this out, I still picked back in April. I figured Seattle, no matter how difficult a team they are, that is a tough place to play. Look at how the Rams played them.
Yeah, I think it's really tough to find 6 out of 8 here, especially with that 3-game, go on the road to New England and then go all the way back across the country to Seattle. Whoever made that one was not happy with the Vikings, right? That's really tough. That's the same thing they did going to LA and then all the way back across the country to face Philadelphia, and they split those 2 games, which was big for them.
They had 10 days rest, though.
That's true. And in this situation, they won't.
No, they come right off of the Packers game at home on Sunday Night Football, straight into the week where they're heading to New England and then to Seattle. I think that's going to be very tough.
I think 9. I think 9 is the number. And then it will depend on what everyone else does. Thanks for the call, Danny, and others who called, and Anthony Harris, who is officially our best guest ever from among Viking players. Number 1. All right, and thanks, Manny, for producing. We'll catch you next time on Purple Live.
Going to Pittsburgh, I'm Ed Donahue with an AP News Minute. President Trump will be in Pittsburgh later today to meet with families and friends of the victims of the deadly synagogue shooting over the weekend. Rabbi Walter Jacob was at a funeral for one of the 11 victims of the shooting.
It's very kind of him to come, but how helpful it'll be in the midst of all of this chaos of mourning, I don't know.
In Wisconsin today, former Vice President Joe Biden says after the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh, it's time to restore civility.
This is not who we are. We need to recognize that words matter. Words matter.
Biden says it's time to restore some dignity to our national debate. State police say a 9-year-old girl and her twin 6-year-old brothers were killed this morning when a pickup truck struck them in northern Indiana as they were crossing a road to board a school bus. Another student was injured. I'm Ed Donahue.